I was talking about my mom and dad, and I told you that they had met when they were very young, and they eventually married. I was their first child, and then my sister was born, and then lo and behold, a number of years later comes my brother, Jim.
And we've had one person join us, Joyce Watton. This is my mother's sister, Aunt Joyce. We'll be coming back to her in just a minute. Keep going, Ma. Sorry.
Alrighty. Well, let me tell you about mom and dad. Daddy, after my grandfather passed away, uh, my Aunt Lee was too young. My Uncle John was involved with his boxing career, and so my daddy, at the age of 14, took over the grocery store in Alpha, New Jersey. Now, it wasn't something that he loved doing, but he did it anyway. And um, he had a number of other jobs. You know, he was a bridge man for a while. He worked on the Dutch Elm project for the government. Um, he did any number of things, but always came back to the grocery business in one way or another. He and Uncle John were very close, um, and they fought like brothers, but they loved each other very much. And so their wives and they would play cards at night, and we would be upstairs and hear them holler and yell. And they had this deal. My daddy and Uncle John used to cheat and laugh, thinking it was really funny. And they would serve coffee and cake and whatever. And one of the women's tricks was to put the spoon in the coffee cup. And then if the men got them annoyed, they would take the spoon out and hit them with it. And they called it, "I'll give you a hot spoon." And they did that, and they laughed. You know, it was kind of fun. After mom and dad retired, they moved to Florida, where my daddy sat and watched TV and went to the dog track and went fishing. And my mother couldn't take it, and so she decided she was going back to work. And she worked for the Collier County, Florida school system for 11 years after she first retired. And so then she retired again. And at that point, she and my Aunt Lee went on a trip to Europe, and she enjoyed it very much.
So what was Graham like? How would you describe your mother?
She was a caretaker. I don't remember too many times in our house where someone wasn't living with us. We had my cousin Kobe for a lot of years, from the time he was 12, I think, until he married around 30. We had my Uncle Bill living with us at one time or another. We had my grandfather living with us, my grandmother Rose living with us.
Uncle Louis.
Who else? Uncle Nuncy.
Uncle Louis.
Uncle Louis would come. So periodically there was always somebody there in the house. And my mother was very gregarious. She loved to have people around. And my daddy was the type that would say hello and then go upstairs and make himself absent. He was not that social, but he had some kind of charisma where all the ladies that would come to the store really loved him. As a matter of fact, he had babies named after him. I don't know what else to tell you about.
Was she
them.
competitive at all?
Oh, my
Was she a
goodness.
clean freak? Tell us about any of that stuff.
Yes, my mother was very competitive.
Did you ever go walking with her?
When she and my mother was in her 70s, or maybe even early 80s at the time, and I was trying to lose some weight, and so I was walking in the evening, and Mama would walk with me, and I said to her, Mom, I'm going to do a little jogging from here to the next pole, whatever. And Mama said, if you're going to jog, so am I. And off she goes. And she did. She jogged with me. We played pinochle. Oh my goodness. There were spades. She wanted to win. Everything that she did, she liked to win. She was competitive. Yes, definitely.
All right, thank you. Okay, Aunt Joyce. How about a quick introduction and tell us about your experience with Graham and Pop, your mom and dad.
Okay. My mother was a beautiful woman. I always thought from the time I was little that she was just absolutely beautiful. She used to sing all the time, and my dad was practically like a perfect father until he got involved with the horses. And he put us to bed every night, your mother and I, and he'd bounce us on the bed, and he'd take us for rides and milkshakes, and he was extremely generous to us. And I had lots of fun with him, always had lots of fun with him. My mother was more the disciplinarian in the house, and the worst thing about being with my mother is you were afraid you were going to hurt her feelings. And when you did, the tip of her nose got red and you knew you were in trouble. Not because she was going to get you, but you felt so bad for hurting her. And my sister tried to be always the perfect kid. I, on the other hand, was the devil and enjoyed being the devil. Aunt Mary would tell me stories like when I was 2 or 3 years old, I would get up in the middle of the night and want roller skates, and my father would say, where am I going to get them? But if I was on a mission, I was on a mission. And I had a lot of fun with my parents and a lot of fears about my father's health. My mother was phenomenal. There's no other way to describe her. If she were living today, she could be a CEO of a corporation easily. She had that kind of ambition, drive, and even though she wasn't educated, she was smart as could be. And really, that's all I have to say about them. They were fantastic parents.
So you mentioned Pop's heart condition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, by the time I was finishing high school, he had had his first heart attack. And after that, he had had other heart attacks and strokes. So his health wasn't good from the time he was in his 30s, really.
And what prompted his heart attack? Did he have any disease as a child or anything?
As a child, he had rheumatic fever.
Yeah.
And that prompted him to have I guess a bad valve. And it left him with a bad heart condition.
And how was Graham's health in general?
In general, she was like a dynamo. She had some serious illnesses, but I only ever remember her complaining about them one time, and it was she had to be in traction, and she had a back hurt, and I remember she really did hurt so much, but all in all, she was not a complainer. She loved people, she loved to be around people, she loved to feed people, and she had lots of fun with people. She was very optimistic, and one of her favorite things is she would say, we'll have to see. When you say, what's going to happen, we'll have to see. You know, that was Graham.
So did Graham have an accident when she was a child that left a scar on her?
When she was just a couple, 3 years old, she had, I don't know, I think it was a big kettle.
A tub of water.
A tub of water poured onto her back and left her with a severe scarring in her back.
Yeah.
Which later she had some surgery for that. But she never talked about illnesses. I mean, she went through the Depression never talked about it. Never thought poor, you know. She just was very sharing with everything she had.
And how many years were Graham and Pop together? How many years were they married? Do you guys remember?
They got married and
They were 19 and 18 when they married.
yeah.
And
About 55 years.
Mom and Dad, let me see. Mom died in 2002, and Dad died
In 74.
18 years before her. So you figure it out, how many years they were
80,
married.
84?
Papa's 73 years old, wasn't he? So that's about
1915 to 1970.
Yeah.
so that's about 55 years.
But 84, so when did Pop pass? What year?
I don't remember.
Because
the year.
84 and 18 is 2002.
What is Michael's birthday?
I don't know, he's 22 years old, so that would make him what? What year was he born 22 years ago?
88. 88 or 89,
88,
yeah.
That's
88.
That's when my daddy died.
So that would have been 14.
Because he,
In 2002, it would have been 14 years then.
Yeah, but they were married like 55 years, weren't they?
something like that.
Did you guys ever throw a surprise birthday party for Graham?
Oh my
That was a
God.
great thing.
So tell us about
her,
it.
Her surprise birthday party. I tell you, I never thought I would get emotional like that, but they made this plan where she didn't want to make a big deal out of her birthday, but everybody had planned to have a big party at my cousin Linda's house. And my mom was like a detective. I mean, you really couldn't put anything over. She always knew if you were doing something. Well, this one time, everybody took an oath that we would try the hardest not to let her know
She came
that,
to my house.
that this party was going to happen. So, they flew my cousin Kopi in from Pennsylvania. Oh, geez, I'm trying to think. Jeff came in from Chicago, was it then?
No, I was actually, I thought I was overseas, but I was coming in from somewhere. I think it was overseas actually.
She said you
Oh, I
called
don't
her for
remember
the
anymore.
house.
But anyhow,
What's that, Aunt Joyce?
She said, "Oh my gosh, that day of her birthday, I just had a call from my grandson Jeff. He's in Paris."
Right,
What
right.
about that?
Yeah.
And how they pulled it off was she stayed with me for a month or so in Charleston, South Carolina, and so Linda took that opportunity to plan this big party for her, and it was probably one of the highlights in my mother's life. I'm telling you, I never saw anybody enjoy something as much as she did.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful, and Linda had it all catered, and it was a Hawaiian luau. And Mother got a book from that,
God,
which she carried that book everywhere with her. She loved that. She said, told everybody, I can picture her with that book. I'd say, Mom, not the book again. But wherever she went, she took the book. She was thrilled with that party, and it came as a complete surprise to her. When I said to her before we walked into the party, Mom, is there anybody you would like to see for your birthday? She said, I would like to see Kopi. And we got to the front door, and Kopi opened the door for her to Linda's house. And she had such a look of shock on her face, I'll never forget it. It was like, I can't believe it. It's like a wish came true for her.
And let me tell you how they got her to Aunt Lee and Linda's house. I had said that I was going to take everybody out to dinner, but because I had the reputation of being cheap, I told them that we had to go to an early dinner, and we were going to have cocktails at Linda's house, and that's how we got her there.
And do you guys remember what birthday this was?
This was
85.
her 85th birthday.
her 85th birthday.
That's right. It was the 85th because we had tried 10 years earlier. Do you guys remember what happened then?
Yeah, we never could get anything by her. That's what I said. But the greatest part was when she was talking about, oh, I got a call from Jeff, Donna Jean, but boom, they were
Vince.
calling me from all over. Vince called me from here, and Jacksonville, Oh, it's so wonderful, right? So we're standing at the door after Joyce had said to her, we, unbeknownst to us, what would be your, what would be the most and biggest wish that you would have? And when she opened that door, and my cousin Kobe came through the door, who had lived with us for like 18 years, and she always felt like he was like a son because he loved her. And when he came through the door, I'm still going to break up. I never thought I could get so emotional, but when my mom started and she started crying, it took me down too. It was a wonderful thing, and it was the greatest party. And like my sister said, she used to carry the book with her, and she would show the pictures because she had such a great time. And I'm so happy that she had that time. Luckily, we lived together for a number of years before she passed away, and it was the greatest thing because I got to know my mother even better as I was older, because she was like me. She couldn't sleep well at night, so I would get up if it was 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd come out and I'd get myself a glass of tea or something like that, and here she'd come out the door, and we would sit a lot of times talking until the morning would come. We'd just sit there and talk about everything. My mom knew about sports, unbelievable. Yeah. Everything about politics. I mean, she was glued in front of the news stations. It was unbelievable. CNN. But she loved sports. That was she loved sports, and she loved the rise of the women's sports like the tennis and that type of thing. It was she was very competitive, and she wanted everybody to know that women could do anything. And through my mother, I learned I respect women. I can't tell you how much. I mean, they run the family, they run the country, because if the men are childish, and the women actually do run everything. I mean, it might not seem it, but in that background, the important part that they play is an unbelievable thing. So I'm grateful. I'm really grateful to have had my mother and father, and my sisters a little bit, but which we're even getting together more and being able to see each other more. My one sister had been in South Carolina for so long, and just getting to know each other more since my mother passed away. It's wonderful, and I'm glad for it.
So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the two brothers, the Ciccarelli brothers, Uncle Jim and Uncle John, and some of their experiences together. And there's a story that you guys tell a lot about Sputnik. Here comes the other Sputnik. So who wants to tell that story?
Well, I can tell the story because I know about it because I was there.
All right, let's hear it.
All the women used to come to my father. He ran the grocery store, and they would come and complain about their husbands. In those days, a lot of the times the husbands were pretty physical and brutal, and they hurt their wives, and the wives didn't have as much recourse. So they would come to my father, and when they would tell my father things, my father would go over to their houses and try to help straighten out the problem. Normally, it was like a physical confrontation between the men, and he just didn't like it. So the one time, Mary, what was her name again? What was Vincent? Mary Vincent came over, and her husband had been drunk in bed for 2 days. Wouldn't get out of bed with a bottle.
He was one of Daddy's tenants.
Oh, and also he was one of my dad's tenants. So she came over to the store. He had beaten her the night before. She had a big black eye, and so my father went over to take care of him, to talk to him. So he came over to the house. He went over to their house, and he didn't go up the steps. He called them from the ground. You have to remember, my dad was about 5'6". He was pretty chunky at that time. He weighed about 180 pounds. But Steve Vincent was about 6'2", and he probably went about 240 to 260. He was a big guy, and younger. That's another thing. And my dad had just gotten out of the hospital 2 days prior to that from having a heart attack. Had just come out of the hospital. So he is at the bottom of the steps, and he calls out, Steve Vincent, come out here. Steve Vincent, come out here. So the guy came out, stood at the railing. He said, what do you want? And he says, I don't want you to touch your wife anymore. He says, you're not going to do that. He said to Dad, what are you going to do about it? He says, come down here and I'll show you. So this big guy come charging at Daddy down the steps. They were in the backyard then, and he come at him like a bull, charging at him to grab him. And Pop stepped aside and hit him with a punch in the head, and the guy dropped. And then the next time, the guy got up again, and then Pop hit him in the ribs. I was there, and I was like 14. And next thing I heard when Pop hit him in the ribs, I heard it. He broke 4 of his ribs with a punch to the ribs, and the guy went down again, and then he started getting up again. And Pop was, like I said, he just had the heart attacks. He couldn't breathe anymore. He's like this. So the guy was getting up and coming at him again, and Pop did the only sensible thing he could. He hit him in the testicles, and that stopped the guy. And then they had to call the ambulance to take the guy to the hospital. And Pop's huffing and puffing, but he was okay. They took the guy to the hospital, and later, this happened in the early part of the afternoon, and later that day, before evening, because it was in the summer, the guy's outside with his ribs all bandaged up, and he's standing on that railing next at his house. And Uncle John my uncle, the boxer, had just heard about what happened. Now, the first thing he said was, "Is my brother all right?" He started crying because he loved his brother, and he couldn't stand anything to happen to him. So Uncle John's coming up the road like walking like a crazy man. And Steve Vincent sees him coming down there, and he goes, "Oh my God, here comes the other Sputnik." And then he runs in the house, locked his door. And Uncle John was outside his house. "Come out here, Steve Vincent. Come out here, I'm gonna kill you, hurt my brother." Well, the guy never laid a hand on my dad, but Uncle John couldn't take it that he would hurt his younger brother, you know. So that was the story of that. But him coming out of the hospital, he didn't take any crap from anybody. It didn't matter that he was not a big guy.
Nope.
He was tough. They were tough. I had aspired to be tough like them, but I didn't have. I mean, I was, but I didn't have that kind of that type of I don't know, rage. I thought I did, but I didn't. I wasn't. I wanted to be like them, but you can never be like the greatest generation that ever lived. I mean, I do consider them that to this day, and I'm 63 years old, almost 64, and that's what I feel. My mother was a wonderful person. My father was a pain at times, but I loved them. I don't know what else to say. They gave us a good life. They raised my sisters well. They're ladies. I never was a gentleman, but they're ladies. And my mother helped me grow up. I mean, she told me one time even when I was 40s, she said, "Oh, you'll grow up when you hit your 50s." She didn't believe men grew up too fast. And the truth of it is, I think she's absolutely right. You know, we don't quite grow up as fast, you know.